And we are live on I believe this is our second St. John's basketball special. And even though it's 10 o'clock live at 10 o'clock, and I've done 2 shows already, this is the third one. I can be on here for 3 hours with these guys because I love St. John's, and I got 2 guys that love St. John's, probably even more than me. So let's get going. We have our 2 special guests, Justin, and I'm probably going to say it wrong again, Solotoff, clinical director of Jag 1 Physical Therapy in Fairfield Commons, and Sergio Rodriguez, host of the Sergio Rodriguez Show and only 2-time softball coach of the year. And we've had him in our All In. Both you guys been on our high school show also, but welcome back. Let's talk St. John's, boys. You know what? Let's start with an opening statement, Sergio, real quick. An opening statement to start this show.
You know, obviously St. John's is, if you really look at it, and I mentioned this to Mike Craig when I had the AD at St. John's when I had him on. When was the last time St. John's was in the back page of the newspaper for more than one day? They stole an entire week during the NCAA tournament, during baseball, which is always big in New York, right as baseball was going to start, during the Knicks having a solid season. St. John's took the back pages based on and solely because Rick Pitino was named head coach at the greatest university in this country. And so when you factor the fact that he is here now, whether it's for 4 years, 5 years, the contract that he signed was for 6, but at 70, I'll respect whatever he gives us. But to have this man with this resume as a coach right now, I go to sleep happy every single day.
Justin, opening statement tonight.
First of all, Serge, do we ever look at the other side of the newspaper? How is that always the back side of the newspaper? I don't think I've ever read the other side.
That's a good point.
Very true.
So off of what Serge had said, coming off of a down year, we did this show last year with a lot of promise, with Mike Anderson having a lot of players back, and the addition of David Jones, who we're very excited to have come aboard. Soriano, we had on the show last year, I predicted that he was going to have a monster season, and also with recruits that we were hoping to get, specifically Brandon Gardner, and we were looking towards NCAA tournament or bust. And the season after 11 or 12-0 start, we won our first game in the Big East by a substantial margin against DePaul. And I keep pointing back to the tournament that they had at the Barclays Center with Temple was the first game and Syracuse was the second game. And it doesn't seem like that long ago they were hoisting up a trophy. The team was dousing Anderson with water, and we were jumping up and down, right? And things kind of fell apart quickly. And unfortunately, the game has sort of really exposed Mike Anderson. Serge and I talk about this a lot, how you can't not like him as a human being, right? He seems like such a nice guy, such a good husband. But the game against Xavier that we had at home, where they had a first time kind of look into the huddles that they had, and Xavier with Sean Miller coaching that team and Mike Anderson, quote unquote, coaching our team, it really brought back bad memories of what we saw with Chris Mullen, where these huddles would happen. For all intents and purposes, Chris was never in the huddle. And Mike Anderson's huddle consisted of, okay, guys, good job. We're down 12, but good job. We need to run.
Oh, I think I might have there he is.
Sorry, we need to run the weave, and we need to, be in a situation where we, where we've got a rebound, and we've got a, there was no coaching, so to speak. and now you're in a situation where you have a guy, and Sean Miller on the other side, all he was doing was coaching and running plays and telling players where to go and what to do. And so now we get a Hall of Fame coach who finally is an X and O guy who you trust to, when we call a timeout in a big spot in the game, to be able to run a play, come out of that timeout, and be able to do something productive. And so, like Serge, I go to sleep every night too, happy that Rick Pitino is our coach.
We'll start with Pitino for the first topic, and I'll be honest, my favorite college basketball coach is Rick Pitino, right? And I'm a St. John's fan, but I'm also a diehard Knicks fan. And when I started watching the Knicks, he was the Knicks head coach with the bomb squad there in 87, 88, 89. So I was always hooked on Pitino. And I would always say to my wife, Jen, who's a big basketball fan, if I could have any coach, not just this year, I mean, throughout watching sports for how many years I've been watching, if I could only have any one coach to be the St. John's coach, it was Rick Pitino. I'll stay here and say, Pitino or Izzo, I'm still going to be biased and say Pitino is the best coach in college basketball right now. So just like you guys say, I can go to sleep saying St. John's got their guy. But Sergio, when that news broke and, the rumors came true, just what is Pitino's value on the court, off the court? And, for his, like you said, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, that he's the head coach, and going forward to this program, just getting Pitino, how big was that for St. John's?
College basketball, unlike any other sport, has always been about the superstar coach, period. You cannot win if your coach is not bigger than the program. It's been proven over and over again. There's a reason why guys like Mike Krzyzewski, John Calipari, and you can go on here, we could be here naming coaches, but those guys are bigger than their program. Even if you take a guy, let's say a guy like Shaka Smart, okay, who is not at the level of these guys, but at Marquette, he's bigger than any player. When you have that in place, you're able to make all the other mechanisms fall into place. You're relevant amongst the social media and what have you, because that's what goes on now. What St. John's has had since they lost Lou Carnesecca has been, in my opinion, one very good basketball coach in Fran Fraschilla. Okay? And one very relevant and solid basketball coach in Steve Lavin. Everyone else has been either non-relevant name-wise or a bad coach. And that includes Mullen. Mullen's not a name because he's not a coach. Okay? Mm-hmm. So Steve Lavin, based on the fact that he coached at UCLA, created a marquee status for himself. But the best thing that Steve did was he was a phenomenal delegator, set up a phenomenal coaching staff around himself. And I truly believe if the cancer doesn't hit him on year 2, St. John's and Steve would still be there. But it's been that irrelevance at the coaching position from a name standpoint that has hurt this program.
Just what's your thoughts on Pitino?
Yeah, one point also that I want to make to what Serge was saying. Not only were the coaches, because I'm a big believer in Fran Fraschilla too. I thought Fran Fraschilla would still be the coach if it wasn't for the incident with where the player where he pulled down his pants to essentially reprimand a player in the locker room, and that got back to, I think it was Grant, right, Serge?
Tyrone Grant. And
so, and he, if you remember, it was his players that he recruited that Jarvis took to the Elite Eight, so it goes a little bit even beyond the fact that we didn't have good coaches. And really, unfortunately, Steve Lavin was ill through his coaching term. And so that, I think that team, because that team was super talented with D'Angelo Harrison, et cetera, Sir Don Pointer and whatnot, that his tenure was cut short because of his illness. And because that really started a lot of situations where you had sort of troublemakers or guys really not sort of behaving themselves when guys were getting suspended. And he had Rashid Jordan, who was really talented. He with a problem with backfoot, etc. But it's beyond the fact that they weren't even good coaches. It's that they were destructive to the program in general, or irrelevant. So, for instance, Jarvis decided he wanted to only recruit international players. So he's trying to bring in international players, essentially destroyed any goodwill that Fran Fraschilla set up with the AU coaches, right? Norm Roberts essentially was irrelevant, and so on and so. Chris Mullen really didn't even coach. So you had a situation where luckily Steve Landwin was such a good recruiter and had such a good reputation for sending guys like Ed Zurich and O'Bannon and
David,
yeah, right, all those guys to the pros, right? That he was able to recruit a great class, and that team could have been really good if those guys essentially they were able to graduate high school or whatnot.
And don't forget, not to cut you off, Justin, but one of the things that actually hurt Lavin was that he did something that doesn't really happen in the Big East. He recruited a one and done player.
Right.
And because he recruited a one and done player, Maurice Harkless,
yeah,
he actually got that second year. On top of that, he got sick. The Big East is not known for having one and done players. You're more of the, you get that 2-3 year player. If Mo Harkless is there years 2 and 3, like everyone else that was there in that class,
right.
They're an NCAA team. They're a Sweet 16 team.
And also Darius Miles, who had committed to the Omar Cook team, and it just seemed like we were losing players. Who would you say, sir?
A lot of bad luck too.
Yeah, a lot of bad luck. Norvell Pell, who I think would have been probably one of our more dynamic big players ever. He essentially couldn't make his way through high school or prep school, and he never came. And it was just Lindsay quit the team, and that team could have been super talented. We just seem to be getting in our own way. What Rick Pitino is doing, to kind of switch back to what we're in the present time, what you can see what Rick Pitino is doing essentially in what the players that he is taking off the transfer list, and people were panicking over the last couple of weeks because go through the sequence of what happened. I don't think any of us could have predicted the fact that even though he said during his press conference that we were going to essentially lose 6 to 8 players and change 3/4 of this team, that we were going to lose guys specifically like AJ Storr, right, and Posh Alexander. Serge and I both also said that we thought Crivello and Jones actually were good fits on this team, specifically the way that Pitino coaches. I thought, how could, if you're Brandon Gardner, how do you not want to play for a Hall of Fame coach? And what happened was, and he stuck to his guns, which is you have to admire that, because he stuck to the fact that he wanted, list them, shooters, right? Shooters, good characters, kids, good students, right? So all of the things that didn't seem to matter much in the print, kids who want to play defense and practice hard. Those are really the 5 things. So think about what is said about the character. I'm not knocking one specific player, but the character of the guys who made up the St. John's roster last year. You had such a talented roster that couldn't even make the NIT tournament, let alone the NCAA tournament. And so you're in a situation where he is bringing in, while they're 5th year kind of players. So it's exactly what we want. Unless you can snag a high level recruit, like the kid who decommitted from UCLA, the kid Mbake who decommitted from Duke. Obviously that would be a huge piece, but I think he's just essentially biding time so that he and his assistant coaches, which Serge probably knows the assistant coaches better than I do, he can speak to that, so that they can get out on the recruiting trail, which they're killing it this summer doing, and they can make their presence felt to get recruits from 24 and beyond. And they're getting high character players now, right? So
Justin, real quick, couple comments. Good friend Kenny saying, good evening, fellas. Kurt, he's saying, go Fort show tonight, 11 o'clock. No, it's Fort show tonight. My wife Jen is saying, hi guys, go Johnnies. Just kidding, wahoo wah. So big UVA fan. So Serge, I'll come back to you with this one. And just like Justin was saying, I remember watching that press conference and he didn't sugarcoat it, right? He just came out and said, there's going to be a lot of players not here. does anybody, two-part question, I guess, does any of these kids not being there, going in the transfer portal, did any surprise you? And is there any possibility at all that any of them come back?
I thought Storr would stay because I thought that he was salvageable based on what I know Rick Pitino would want and his ability to shoot the basketball. But it was very clear to me on this team this entire year that everybody was playing to become a pro or thinking they were going to become a pro. A lot of selfish play. Everybody looking to get theirs, whether it was Jones, Curbelo, Posh. I mean, listen, I know St. John's fans love Posh Alexander. I don't get enamored like that with players like I did when I was younger. You know, to me, it's a revolving door. I get it. But Posh Alexander's been terrible the last 2 years. Like, I have not seen the same guy that played his freshman year. I have not. He's been bad, inconsistent. His jump shot has been spotty at best. His intensity defensively. So to me, losing all these guys, we've been losing anyway.
Right.
You're true. It's right, though. You know, but and in your opinion, nothing, all those bridges are burned. No way, nobody comes back.
way.
No
You
way.
don't want that. Listen,
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now.
There's nobody left.
I had multiple people close to the program within the university tell me it was a great day when they lost 3 or 4 in particular of those kids, just from being people, just people.
Yeah.
That's a
I
big.
mean,
That's
think about the fact that St. John's retained Van Macon, right? So the one coach who probably was closest to all those players and to Brandon Gardner, you know, the lead recruiter and Brandon Gardner. And so Rick Pitino's first order of business was going to the higher ups in the university, to Father Shanley, to Craig, and specifically to Van Macon in this instance, and saying, tell me about these kids. What kind of character do these kids have? What does it say to the fact that Van Macon didn't plead, minus Joel Soriano? Think about who's left.
Joel Soriano and 2 guys that didn't play.
Fiore and Mo
Right.
Kina, what are they? Well, obviously Joel Soriano is probably potentially an All-American, but what are the other 2? I guarantee you watch the games, you know, because Serge and I were watching games. You watched the games, Kurt. Those were the 2 biggest cheerleaders off the bench. They were the biggest character guys who were high-fiving everybody off the bench. Pitino didn't even care that they didn't play. Tristan Fiore was a 3-star recruit out of high school. I have some faith, and when he got in for a couple minutes, he was decent, that Pitino can mold him to a potentially serviceable 8 to 12 minute a game guy, but they don't care. They don't care. He recruited them, you know, for that reason. You know, he recruited Cruz Davis for that reason, to transfer over, because if you listen to every coach speak about Cruz Davis, he's a great kid. He is first one off the bench. He's going to high five everybody. Everybody will have a role and know their role on this team. What Mike Anderson did such a horrendous job of doing was, and we kind of talked about this last year, was figuring out who are going to be this 5 to 7 guys who should play the big minutes every game, and then rotate the right way. You know,
Julian all over the place.
Julian Champagne would score 12 straight points and be toasting everybody, and then he'd pull him to sit him. You know, and so the inconsistency of his coaching and his horrendous substitution pattern destroyed this team. You know,
guys, do we realize that things were so bad at St. John's? Now, we might not want to admit it because, like Justin said, we do like Mike Anderson on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
But things were so bad that we had a player in Rafael Pinzon on social media say he's got better coaching at the AAU high school level.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Who says that about a coach publicly?
Yeah.
You know what? As crazy as this statement sounds about Pitino, right, Serge? And I'm going to say to you, and I mean, is this a crazy statement where it was like Pitino or bust? Like, I don't know if another guy could have saved this program besides Pitino. I mean, seriously, if he said no, where would they have gone?
Right.
You're right. You're right.
It could have been,
It's sad
you
to
know, you
say,
read,
but seriously.
you know, you read about like funny enough, like if there was another guy that I would have wanted, ironically, it'd be because you always sort of want, you know, the impact of having Pitino, what he hopefully is going to be able to and should be able to do for the program for however long he is there, extends to the, you know, Mike Repoli situation, then NIL situation. The school needs to hit the 21st century. You know, it has to upgrade its facilities. It has to upgrade the arena. It has to upgrade the weight room. It has to give the students better housing. You know, it go on and on and on. You know, and yeah, good.
No, good. Well, I think what I'm hoping for privately is that Rick gets this program where it's an NCAA tournament every year. Forget about this national title stuff. We all would love to do that. I think if we ever did that, I don't know if I would have enough tears of all the crying I will do. But if he can make us a perennial Sweet 16 NCAA tournament team and hand it over to Masiello,
Right.
and then he moved to be his assistant, right? Just because that's his guy, just to be around the program as he gets into those years, similar to how Gene Cady was with Steve Lavin, just to sit there. I think that would be the best scenario St. John's could have 7 years from now.
Right. Well, because you have to be in it to win it. If you look at what happens, you know, if we consistently be in the NCAA tournament, you're talking about a couple lucky shots and, you know, and a couple defensive stops, and you're in the Final Four. It's, you know, even the best teams don't make it. It's so, but you have to be there to at least have a shot to make it. You know,
Guys, like, you know, it's mind-boggling to me. Like, and get me if I'm wrong with this stat, but like since we've won the tour, with the last time we won the Big East tournament was 2000, right? We haven't played on Friday night since 2000.
Yeah,
I mean, is that insane?
Yeah.
Well, remember a couple of years we didn't even make the tournament because the Big East.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
right.
I mean, you're talking 23 years. We can't even get to a Friday night of the
playing
Big East
at home.
At home, exactly at home.
Right. Yeah.
So let's get to the transfer portal, right? And every time I'm watching St. John's games with Jen, you would say I'd be like a broken record.
By the way, as Jen in Virginia has gotten to 50 points yet.
I could do another panel on Tony Bennett.
Oh God, this year's game. Right, that was awful. I hope you moved out for a week. That was terrible.
Watching every game, I said, can we get a friggin' shooter? I mean, we do not have a shooter. Seriously, who was our shooters? We don't have a shooter. When's the last time we had a shooter?
Fred Lyson.
Seriously,
there's love Freddie Lyson.
We're watching games in the Big East. You know, we're watching games in the NCAA tournament, and you're seeing team after team with shooters, and we can't get a shooter.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, it happens. That's. I mean, if you look at the players that he's recruiting here, if you look at the players that he's recruiting here from the transfer portal, even though it seems like he's honing in on the Iona players, because there's familiarity there, is that if you you know, when you talk about let's put aside the high character kids, the good student kids, Conway, he can shoot. You talk about the kid who came in today, Quinn, he's 6'9", he can shoot. Dennis can shoot. He's at 30, 35, 36%. So and Eleni, when he was with Virginia Tech, he had a little bit of an off year for UConn because he didn't get consistent minutes, but when he was at Virginia Tech, he can shoot. So why that's important is yes, it's knocking down the shots is important, obviously, but it's the defense is respecting that is even more important, because all they do is collapse. And truthfully, Soriano can be really, in theory, if he's used the right way, can be a 24-12 guy, but they all, they collapse on him, and they can even do more so because he's going to have much more respect coming into this season than last. But if you can make sure that they cover the perimeter and leave it so that he's one-on-one down below, at least he's got a shot,
Serge, what's your thoughts on the transfer portal? What do you like? What else you think we need to do?
St. John's is going to have to figure out a way to get consistent scoring from at least one other person that comes in the transfer portal. Just one. Everyone else, they'll do by committee, but they do need, in my opinion, he's got to get somebody that can consistently ring the bell, because you don't want to fall yourself into a situation where you do become a solid team, but in the last 5 minutes of every game,
nobody knows who's the go-to guy and
correct,
stuff like that, right?
And sometimes because of the zone defenses that's played in college, sometimes having a big man as your go-to guy is easier to get controlled, right? You can put him out of certain situations. So I want to see a wing player, or someone that can at least be consistent putting the ball in the basket.
That's Noah Thomason. I think he's a key. I think he comes. He's a Niagara transfer. He's good friends with Jenkins. I think if I had to say one guy, I mean, everybody wants Ledlum because he's a bulldog, right? So he can help Soriano rebound. For some reason, I feel like he would have committed if he was coming. He had such a good visit with, everybody claims they had great meetings, great visits, great this, great that.
Now, look, remember, to be fair, the kid that committed today, Slazinski, I believe his last name is.
Yeah.
He was a recruit
Louisville.
in the previous regime at Louisville.
Yeah. Right.
And he only played a handful of games this year. He had a foot injury. He's the kind of guy that can fill it up from the outside.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about a guy who has, there's guys that can score regardless of where they're from, like Thomason, right? I don't care that he's at Niagara. It doesn't matter. You could tell he's a bucket. You need another guy like that.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, Ledlum would be a steal because he, it's all based on playing. The guys look at the quotes that are the guys who signed. It's the same thing. My dream has been to play in Madison Square Garden, and my dream is that how could you not want to play for a Hall of Fame coach in Rick Pitino? Why was that not the statement from every single St. John's player that he was accepting back that decided not to come back? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So to me it would be Ledlum and Thomason. Those are the two big gets. I can't, it'd be shocking if Rick can somehow snag one of these high level high school kids to come. To me, they're all in on Boogie for next year, right, Serge? Don't you think?
Yeah.
And
by the way, he's Dominican. Felipe told me he's getting involved already.
Right, perfect.
So, all right. So you guys, I mean, we got so many topics we could get to. NIL, you guys mentioned Rapoli before. How big now? Because I remember he was all big on, I follow him on, I got a little feedback, Justin. I'm not sure if I feel
Probably
from your
me.
phone, maybe. You might be a little closer. NIL, Rapoli, what's your thoughts on that, Sergio? And how big would Rapoli going forward? Is he going to have to get involved, for the NILs going forward and all that?
They're going to get involved, but I think St. John's is being very smart about the amount of money that's openly, or I should say privately, available to Pitino right now. In other words, they understand, and I think we're going to have to understand that the money that's going to be spent is going to be in the recruiting class of the younger players, not in the transfer portal guys that are coming in here essentially to set stability. Rick Pitino right now is trying to set up a team similar to what Providence has been doing the last couple of years. Old wins right now in the NCAA tournament, period.
Yep.
He's going to try to get a team that gets to the NCAA tournament, set the groundwork, and then, for lack of a better term, have an opportunity to buy the championship.
Well, you know what? I mean, am I wrong for saying this? And the transfer portal, there's great players in the transfer portal. Don't get me wrong. But, how many 5 stars, how many of those are in the portal as opposed to, you're saying, go get those in the recruiting world with the younger kids. That's where you're going to get the star players. Am I right or wrong?
Correct.
With that?
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, plus also the guys, they're also the guys. That's not my mic, I don't think, actually. Sorry. But those are the guys who, unless it's picking up static from my woolly mammoth beard over here, but those are those are the guys who I feel like it's important that Rick snags like a guy like Boogie or somebody like that early, because it creates a safety net to if this season doesn't go well on the court. You got a Hall of Fame coach. You're putting together kids minus the 3 Iona kids who play together, but kids sort of coming together from all over the place. And you can see, even though he's a Hall of Fame coach, us having sort of a mediocre season here. Because to be honest with you, the Big East is really tough right now. And the team that he has on paper, even if he adds 1 or 2 more pieces, potentially is going to be an average team at best. You got to figure it's going to be rated. It's like you give, let's say we're ranked 9th in the Big East, and then because of Pitino, you bump us to 7 or 6. If he can snag 1 or 2 big time recruits to create a safety net where the St. John's fans on social media are not ripping him to smithereens, because in New York it's all about what have you done for me lately. Those guys all left and he's being ripped on social media, and nobody's given him a chance to do what he knows behind the scenes he's going to do, right? So you got to in Rick we trust, so to speak. So it's one of these situations where I think if you have a safety net to say, you know what, all right, this year's not that great, but these are guys who are leaving anyway, and we've got a couple of big-time recruits or win the top 5 for the couple more big-time recruits, and we can sort of throw money their way, then I think that we will be in good shape.
What do you got, sir?
No, listen, I expect St. John's to be in the tournament next year. I do. I've seen the way the Big East has functioned for 40-plus years. It's a player development league. And if you can player develop, you will win. Providence is the model. Just watch what he's done there. Watch what Cooley did there. You're going to get it done if you have maturity and can coach and can player develop. I think we're going to have all 3. I think because the Big East is loaded, Creighton's going to be good. Xavier's going to be good. UConn is defending champ.
Nova, don't count them out, right?
You know what? I think they're headed the other way. I think I'm not worried about Nova, Providence, DePaul, or Butler just yet. So I think by default, St. John's is the 6th best team. By default. All you got to really do is beat out 1 or 2 this year, finish 4th. I think you'll be fine.
And you get in. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Again, there's so many topics. Serge, any topic you want to hit, anything you want to go over? I know, like, we could do recruiting, assistant coach, facilities. Well, I got one for you. Soriano, how good could he be?
Well, he's Dominican. Look, I think he's a guy that can play himself onto an NBA roster. Why? 2 reasons. A, he's athletic at his size, but B, he's got good feet at his size. Most of those guys that are 7-footers and play inside struggle with a lot of foot issues. And he looks like he's a guy that can take a pounding on those feet for 10 years and be a good role player in the NBA.
And he's also, to add that, so Serge hit it on the head with the footwork, because losing the weight that he lost really helped him a ton, because if you remember when he first came up from Fordham, you would not say that he was an athletic big man. He lost a ton of weight, got himself in great shape, and really stepped up to this was going to be his year that he had to prove himself. And he did a couple things that were super impressive to me. One is he was like Serge Steff. He was so quick on his feet. He was dunking balls before he could even believe that he dunked the ball. He would get a pass from Corbello or Posh, and he was off his feet so quickly and dunked it. You're like, well, I can't believe he dunked that. Last year he would have laid that up instead of dunked it. 2 is he stayed out of major foul trouble. I don't think he fouled out of 1 game. So that's important too. And 3 is, and I was at an early game where I was sitting maybe 2nd or 3rd row behind the bench. He had a terrible first half. It was actually our opening game of the season, and he had a terrible first half. And all he wanted to do was he sat with Zendon Hamilton, for 10, 15 minutes, coming back out of halftime, and they went over plays and post ups and this and that, and he took it upon himself as a team leader to make sure that he came out of the second half. I think he scored the first 9 points, and to establish himself as one of the best big men in the Big East. So he made his free throws a decent percentage. I think it was like maybe 70%, and it definitely was not his fault that we had the issue that we had this past year.
Justin, I'm going to stay with you on this comment from Kenny. Pitino, no doubt, will improve St. John's basketball alone by himself. I do think he has to hit the transfer portal jackpot and make recruits want to come to New York City. I guess here's my question. Pitino, New York City, is it I'm going to play for Pitino? Is it going to play I'm playing in the Big East / New York City? Or is it going to be a combination of both?
I mean, because there's talk to increasing the games at the Garden, I think from maybe 4 to 8, 9, or 10. I'm pretty sure that I think that now Madison Square Garden becomes a bigger lure for people would talk about coming to play Madison Square Garden. They show the St. John's kids that, and I'm thinking we're playing like 4 games a year there. Like, what's the difference? And on those games, 3/4 of the fans are from the other team. So it's not even a home court advantage anymore. So if you although I do have to say a couple of the big games that St. John's played, even though we lost, which were the UConn game, the Villanova game this year, that we had pretty close. The St. John's fans came out. It was like 12, 13, 14,000 people, and I think that if you can get recruits to games there, and we're winning close games, and the Garden's going crazy, I don't think it'll ever be, honestly, back the way that it was when we remember in the 80s when Mullen and Ewing and whatnot were playing. But if it can get close to that, then that becomes a major advantage for us. And then you have to have a situation where you're increasing, sort of the facilities, so to speak. You have to. The Carnesec Arena is what is. We can tolerate an arena that's 6,000-7,000 people if we're jam packing it with St. John's fans, even for exhibition games, and going crazy there, but playing the majority of our games at Madison Square Garden, and the NIL money is going to be big.
Serge, what do you? Oh, I'm sorry, Justin. Go ahead.
It just is going to be that thing. I mean, Rick Pitino has such a good track record for coaching kids, and if you listen to some of the quotes from players that he had in the past, specifically Smith from Louisville and those guys like Donovan Mitchell, they talk to how much of a father figure he was. That's missing from St. John. That's missing. You've got to make these kids. You're selling the parents into the school as much as you're selling the player. When a mother of these kids says, I think you need to lean here, go there, I guarantee you they're making the final decision. I mean, unless you disagree, Serge.
Justin, you know what? Yeah, I was all calmed down tonight, and you had to use the word Donovan Mitchell. I'm a diehard Knick fan, and after last night and what I got to deal with this weekend, and you had to go to. But I love Donovan Mitchell. He should have been a Knick. I think he'll still be a Knick one day. So
that's funny, but yes, that's true. But so it's just you have to sell everybody on the school, and so it's as a package. And when players talk about how a coach makes them a better person and a better adult and better able to deal with adversity, that's what a parent wants to hear. First and foremost, the money will be there for these kids. The fame will be there for for most of these kids. That's what they really want to hear. So,
Serge, you agree with that? Anything you want to add or, to that with the whole recruiting thing? What's going to be that selling point? Is it Pitino, New York City, like Justin's saying, a little of everything?
Pitino number one, because like I said, I am still a firm believer that the college coach in college basketball is huge. So that's number one. But number two, I think that the NIL stuff and having New York as a base, where is the center capital of the world, for lack of a better term, where you could market certain things, kids can make a lot of money being here off their image and likeness. I think it's a slam dunk. I think without the NIL, I was worried about where St. John's as a basketball program could go. But I think the NIL is going to be huge for us. As much as Channel 4 was to a certain degree for Notre Dame back in the day in football. It's changed now, right? I mean,
That was big back then. I mean, how many teams had their own network?
Exactly.
You know?
Right?
Exactly.
So I think it's huge. But I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. I love watching Notre Dame lose. Nobody hates Notre Dame football more than me. 1986, by the way, 88, by the way, guys. 1988.
Yeah, that's a long time.
All right. But the fact is that they were still able to recruit an elite level player back in the day because of what you said, on network, blah, blah, blah. But now everybody plays on TV. And I think that hurt St. John's for many years and hurt the Big East. But I think that now the NIL stuff will do the opposite for St. John's.
Serge, two-part question from our good friend Jody. One, is Pitino still a top 5 coach?
He's the best.
And two,
I kid you not. And not because he's the St. John's coach.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
He's the Pat Riley of college basketball.
Let me ask you this. We just watched UConn roll through a tournament, right?
Stop.
No. We just watched UConn roll. But I'm saying Iona's, what were they up? Weren't they up in half on them?
Yes, they were.
I mean, with those, you know what I'm saying? So you got to give Pitino some credit there, right? I mean,
Rick Pitino, again, I'm biased, but I said this when he was at Louisville, when he was at Kentucky.
Me too.
Rick Pitino is the best. If I have to win one game for my life,
exactly, 1,000%.
No longer will we ever be outcoached in a game. We might lose the game based on talent that day. A guy made shots, whatever. But what Justin brought up earlier, having a game on TV mic'd up, he will put on a clinic in that mic'd up.
Yep, that's a problem. And
also we were
Justin, real quick on
one more thing.
Justin, second part, Serge. Does Pitino's age worry you at all?
No, because I understand that he's here for a particular time frame, which, like I said, 5 or 6 years. He still is very energetic, very invested in what he's doing, still has his fastball. But more importantly, I think that what he's going to do is going to set St. John's up to stay relevant after he leaves.
Yeah.
And sir, Justin, same one for you. Pitino, is he a top 5 coach, and does age worry you?
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, I agree with Serge. He even transitioned to coaching in Greece, for God's sake, and made that team successful, and also dealt with the adversity that was coming his way with the allegations, So from an X and O standpoint, it's what we were missing, exactly what we needed, and then from an age standpoint, he's in great shape. He's, like Serge said, he's energetic. He has a mission. He's focused, and Serge and I were texting. I think it was like earlier this week or late last weekend. I was saying how, you would hear St. John's was sort of in on a player on the circuit. If it's AU stuff, if it's going to some kid's school or whatever, Nike camps in the summer, ABCD camps or whatever. And, you always heard a St. John's coach was, Norm Roberts was in the crowd, or St. John's had an assistant there. For some reason, the coach never made it there. Mullen never made it there, but he had an assistant there. But when you heard, Rick Pitino was in the gym, I knew he didn't have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Now Rick Pitino's in the gym wearing our colors. It's just his presence alone is enough for people to say that the mighty one walked through the door, so to speak.
And you know what? To add to that, don't forget, and Justin alluded to the parents and stuff. Rick Pitino, we're the parents whose kids are going to college now, right? I mean, I have a kid going to college now. If the kid doesn't know who Rick Pitino is, which I doubt, rest assured the parent knows who Rick Pitino is.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
No, it's a great point, and it's, just like you said, and Serge, I think you just said it best, because, and it's the same thing with college basketball, right? Like, you look like now Caitlin Clark and, Paige Beckers and all that stuff. But think about it. It was Gino, right? It's all about these coaches. It was Krzyzewski, right? It was Roy Williams. It's Calipari. That's what it is.
What's Tennessee been since Pat Summitt left?
You're right. You're right. I read on somebody's top 24. I forgot if it was Goodman or somebody's the other day, and I'm looking. I'm like, who's the first person that's going to put St. John's? So they're writing write-ups, and I think it was Jeff. Is it Jeff Goodman? I forgot who it was.
Yeah,
anyway,
Goodman put him at 25.
25, right? And he just said,
I got one better for you.
That's it.
I have one better for you. In Las Vegas right now, St. John's is the 16th favorite to win the NCAA tournament next year.
That's mind-boggling.
What does that tell you?
Yeah,
It's Rick Pitino. They had 2 players. When they put that out, when Vegas put that out, they had 2 players on the roster.
Yeah. Well, isn't that what he put when he had the top 25? What did he say? With 2 players, Rick Pitino, plain and simple. Like, that's it. That's it.
It's almost going to be surreal when you go to those first games at Carnesec Arena, and Serge has tickets close, and our friend Mike has tickets close. That you're sitting. I'm going to be looking, going, is that?
He's our coach.
Double take.
I asked. Like I said, I had Mike Craig, the AD at St. John's, on my show, and my question, one of my first questions was, at what point did you say to yourself, damn, I got Rick Pitino?
Yeah, pinch me. I know.
Well,
Yeah.
Serge, I don't know if you know, but Justin, I'm a diehard Bronco fan. So
I know.
Oh, yeah, wait, rewind, Serge, rewind.
I know you are, because I told you that Russell Wilson's cooked, and you kept on telling me, well, we got Russell. I told you that guy's garbage.
But wait, here's my thing now. I've gone in the past how many months from Nathaniel Hackett and Mike Anderson. I like Mike Anderson, but Mike Anderson and Nathaniel Hackett to Sean Payton and Rick Pitino, that's pretty damn an improvement. No?
Yeah. The difference is, in football, you need a quarterback to win.
Hey, don't count Russ out yet, guys. Don't
get the hell out of here.
Come on.
How many more years do you need to see of that?
I want to see Russ being, listen, I don't count anything from last year from that organization. Anything. It was so bad. Anything.
Justin, tell this guy Russell Wilson's been cooked for 3 years.
Yeah, Kay's been cooked for a couple of years.
I don't know.
I mean, truthfully, their best player got hurt. I think Javonte Williams was their best player last year.
Hey, Javonte Williams and we're getting off the subject, but Javonte Williams, and now we got P-Line. He's just got to hand it, boot it, and throw the best deep ball in football. Boom.
I give you a lot of credit, man.
I'm still in on him. Guys, you got, but that's the thing. We're going from such a coach that was so dysfunctional that he screwed everything up. So I'm sorry. I don't believe a player, it just goes I saw Peyton Manning, and the guy had a broken neck, and okay, he was older, but I'm sorry. You just don't decline. You don't go to a terrible quarterback. It's system, all that kind of stuff. But we got 20 minutes left. Justin, what do you want to hit? Any other topics you want to hit up?
Let's see. Other topic for St. John's, you said?
Yeah. We'll get off the Russell Wilson thing right now.
Okay. I mean, what is curious? So, what would be interesting comparing apples to apples? And I sort of was hoping this was going to happen. It was that a part of me wanted to see Pitino coach the team that we had last year. I don't know how many of them could have actually survived his system or his practice, but in theory, on paper, we had a very talented team, right? It's just is that way. And so the problem was that, like Serge said, everybody was sort of out for themselves. So but Mike Anderson was not running any sets. Every time you had to get into half court, he wasn't able to run a set. He plays at 40 minutes of hell. And how many turnovers did we ever create? We probably
that's what I had watching every game. 40 minutes.
Yeah,
of hell.
exactly. And so we got to talk about the cheerleaders at some point. Can Pitino upgrade our cheerleaders, maybe? But we need to bring back the guy who ran around with the flag. That guy was fantastic. But they have So you have a situation where he brought think about this. He tried out all of those kids. Okay. I guarantee you nobody could shoot the ball except for AJ Store. I guarantee you, Pasha Alexander, when you read the quote from him, he said, Pitino wanted me back. I wanted to come back, but I felt like the staff didn't really want me there. You know what that translates to? They had him shoot probably 50 balls and he missed 48 balls. And they were like, well, we can't have this kid. He can't shoot consistently. He can't be our lead guy with the ball. It's not going to work, And I think that trickled down to Corbello and Jones and literally all the other places. So the only surprising one to me again was AJ Store, because I thought that he played Pitino type basketball, and he could have been put into a situation where he would have been in the spotlight. He would have been the guy that Serge is talking about, the other consistent scorer that we need on the team to knock down that last shot. He was the one out of, look, I wanted Brandon Gardner because the guy jumps through the roof and literally dunks every basketball. When talking to people in the know, so to speak,
He can't shoot. He's really not a shooter, right?
He's not a player. He's dominating on the high school level because he's more athletic than everybody else. So I remember catching. Zach was coming through, and Mike gave me his tickets, and I said, Zach, what's going on? I said, what's the situation? He said, I would take losing Brandon Gardner 100 times over if we got Pitino. He said, trust me, Brandon Gardner is nothing special. He'll turn into a decent highlight film guy, but he's nothing special. So, but the one that really surprised me was AJ Store, because, I really thought that he could have been and what a weird selection, in my opinion, in Wisconsin. Like, how is that the school that you're ending up, that you think you're going to thrive in that situation at that university?
Be lucky to get to 10 points a game.
Yeah, no, it's not a high power. He is a high flying, high powered, shoot the ball 22 times a game kind of player.
Sir,
Kurt, that Posh is Seton Hall bound, right?
Is that official, or it's going to happen?
Sure, right, sir? I think, at least as far as I know.
I didn't see it being official. I just heard the same thing, whatever. Yeah. But good.
Yeah.
Good. Let him go there. They, so we can beat him.
Right.
Well, that's what you said, Serge, right? Like Justin, like when I first looked at it too, and I was like, oh man, Pitino with this team. I mean, they're better on paper, they're better, but is it in the long run, Serge? Is it just better? Like you wipe it clean, you really start right now fresh and say, hey, let's, there might be a couple players who could have helped, but to do what we really got to do, we got to wipe this slate clean and go forward.
Guys, there were a lot of issues outside of basketball.
Yes, correct. Yes.
That were affecting the program.
Yeah.
And Rick Pitino was just not going to have any of it.
He would have aged horribly with that team. He would have been ripping his hair out with those guys.
It would have been a suspension here. And that's the other thing with St. John's. Holy shit.
Every
day for the last 20 years, you got to catch everything at 3:30. Who's hurt? Who's not playing for a suspension? Yep. There is always an issue. You can never make that up. Think about the last 5 years. Corbello, Pinzone. You could just go back.
Posh is always hurt, right? Posh was always hurt.
It was always the kid that transferred from Rutgers got hurt this year.
Oh yeah,
Mathis.
Mathis. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Mathis disappeared
on
the face of the
earth. Gone. Yep.
Who was the kid with Pons, the electric kid? Pons, and what's his name? The kid he wound up not playing at the end.
Was it the point guard?
The backcourt. No. The back.
You're talking about
Levette? Well, no.
Marcus Levette. Yeah.
Levette. No, right? No,
yeah, Marcus Levette.
I wanted to watch that kid play so badly. I would literally. This is how every St. John's game goes for the last 5, or actually ever since I've known Serge, which has been a long time now. So because I'm busy working, he's coaching. We essentially start out with who's taping the game, and then don't tell us the score. But so I'll sort of check the score if we win. I go to the TV set. Sometimes at work, sometimes at home. And I'm watching them in the handshake line, and I'm going, Serge, why is so-and-so not on the handshake line? Serge, who got hurt? Is my first question not who got hurt this game or who was suspended?
Always.
You can't count all of the players
ever. Gonna happen.
Ever. You can't count every player. I'm like, Check. Okay, good. We're good tonight. I don't even have to watch the highlights.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll always say I'm prejudiced, so I'm like, hey, I'm always Big East, man. So I'll always say Big East, but I don't know. The past couple of years, you really probably couldn't say the Big East was the best conference in football. In basketball. But Kenny's saying now, UConn winning it all should help recruits even want to play more in the Big East. St. John's and Big East getting back to 80s, 90s version of the Big East, and it has me excited. And he's a Miami Hurricane fan. Could we
I'm a
say
Hurricane
now,
football fan. I'm a Hurricane football fan.
Can we say now, though, with Pitino going back, UConn as the champs, like you said, Creighton's going to be good. Is it the best conference? Is it the best conference?
Yes, definitely.
It's been the best conference, guys. Yeah. Listen, Michigan State won the last title for the Big Ten. Is a bunch of frauds. They haven't won a championship since 2000.
2000.
Okay? And every year I got to hear how 8 or 9 teams are going to get in, blah, 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 blah. And as soon as they play 3 guys with decent athletes, they're out. Okay? Yeah. The Pac-12, 97 Arizona hasn't won a championship. Frauds.
And how many times have they? Arizona as a, what was it? 2 seed 2 years ago, right? They get bounced.
Well,
Frauds. Frauds. But nobody's worse than the Big Ten. The Big Ten is, listen, if they would, they're minus one on Selection Sunday, just show up with a mask and a gun on because they're stealing bids. Stealing bids, frauds. Everybody's a fraud there. Everybody.
Well, I always laugh like Iowa. Every year, Iowa, right? Iowa.
Oh. Everybody's a fraud.
Like
everybody.
Come on.
Everybody's a fraud in that league. And in football, let me tell you something. In football, it's the same shit. You'll have Ohio State. I got to give them credit. Everybody else, fraudulent.
Yeah.
Well, that's only because they have to figure out the East-West thing. Because the Big Ten title game should not even be played in that. Because the west side of that conference, it's like Ohio State or whatever, Michigan or Penn State, and it's like Northwestern or Purdue on the other.
And Iowa's
yeah, right. That's why they're bringing.
Listen, I can argue it. I mean, I argue this on our show every time. There should be, every year there should be 2 SEC teams in the playoff, at least. Seriously,
that's how you should start.
How is Alabama? Oh, Alabama shouldn't be in. But if you look in Vegas, they're still like the second favorite besides Georgia to win the national championship.
Yeah.
Well,
because the problem there too is that if they don't, on a separate topic. Actually, one thing before we switch that real quick is that I think Ed Cooley switching to Georgetown huge because college basketball needs St. John's and Georgetown back. And Chris Mullen and Patrick Ewing were not doing it. And they really need them. But that's the heyday of college basketball. I mean, you'll point back to some of the, obviously, let's forget the UCLA teams and whatever. But if you look at middle 80s basketball and you look at Georgetown, North Carolina, Georgetown, Houston, St. John, all those teams, that's the heyday of college basketball. So the college basketball needs St. John's and Georgetown back. I mean,
you guys think it's just hard? Like, listen, Ewing should have been fired as the coach. He didn't produce there. But is it just like, how hard is it to say, hey, you got to go fire Patrick Ewing from Georgetown?
That was Mullen, too.
Exactly. It's their best,
I equate it to dating your best friend who's a girl. You either jump in with 2 feet and have the best relationship ever, or you've lost your best friend. So unfortunately, you have probably the 2 best players in the history of the Big East, and Mullen and Patrick Ewing. And you're in a situation where people are like, oh my God, Chris, let's say before they coached, they're legendary. Yeah. Forget about what they did in the pros and their Hall of Famers. They're legendary college basketball players. You see Chris Mullen, you bow to Chris Mullen if you're a St. John's fan, the greatest player in the history of St. John's basketball. Now you see Chris Mullen, you're like, hey, Chris. And then you're like, gotta tilt your head a little, and you're like, thanks a lot, And same thing with Patrick, because it's so sad. It's the risk you're taking. It's not taking. Serge hated that hiring. It's not taking Danny Hurley. It's not taking Bobby Hurley, which was the guy I wanted. It's taking who have coaching experience on the way up in the coaching ranks. It's taking Chris Mullen with the wing and a prayer that he's going to bring St. John's back to prominence. And you see Rick Pitino brings the best of both worlds. worlds in the fact that he is not only a Hall of Fame, one of the greatest coaches of all time, but has a great track record of getting guys to the pros. People thought that guys would go to Georgetown, big guys would go to Georgetown. Why? Because Patrick can coach big guys, right? Even in the pros with Orlando, he coached big guys and made them successful. Name a big guy. That shit. Even Mutombo's son doesn't even play anymore. So, and then people would go to St. John's because Chris is one of the greatest shooter. He'd take this kid, that kid, make them into a great shooter. They can't coach. They don't know how to translate the NBA game to the college game, for one, right? And for two, they can't coach. And actually, their connections to the pros are on a higher level. Chris's connections are on a GM level. That's why you don't hear Mark Jackson's name anymore really associated. Remember, he was associated with even St. John's coaching job, a couple of times. They're out of the game too long. They cannot relate to these kids, these players. You can't tell me Chris Mullin doesn't want to, throw himself on the floor when some kid misses an open 20-footer to win a game, or misses 18 out of 25 free throws. The team. So that's why Pitino is such a great hire. He not only has his connection, but he can coach.
I guess my last point, and getting back to the Pitino, and I'll go back to Serge for this one. Looking back at it now, is it like a silver lining, I guess, how this happened, right? Because just say Anderson made the NCAA tournament this year or even a year ago, he's probably not gone, right?
Definitely.
So do you think that we had to hit rock bottom? I don't know if you want to consider rock bottom. It's pretty damn close, right? So did we have to hit rock bottom for this to really go and say, hey, go get Rick Pitino? What do you think, Serge?
Obviously, look, when you get into a situation where you're going to want to hire a guy like that, everything has to fall into place. Forget about the fact from the St. John side that you had to hit rock bottom. Flip it over. He had to be in a situation where only you could get him. Because let's be honest, if Rick Pitino is at Louisville now, you're not getting him.
Right.
Right? So, and if when he came back, he would have landed, let's say, at Georgetown, or he would have landed at West Virginia. I'm just throwing it. You're not getting him, because you're not going to be able to match them financially to even try to steal him. So everything, I think that this has been lining up for St. John's now, if you really want to get cynical, for about 10 years now, or 7 years, let's say, since, because it's been what? He spent 2 years in Greece, 3 at Iona, so that's 6 years. It's been kind of lining up for St. John's to get Rick Pitino.
But do you think one tournament, Justin, would this have been made, or Mike Anderson stays one tournament? If
he has a winning team. They make the tournament this year. Mike Anderson did not go. There were people who and the problem was it's not even. There were 3 problems with Mike Anderson trying to get him out. It was like a 2-part thing here. One was they owe him a ton of money. I mean, Mike Craig, unfortunately, signed him to an extension for God knows what reason, trying to create some stability, actually, in the program, probably. And he's owed like $10 million. The school doesn't have that money. Mike Repoli paid that money, most likely. The 2, or they had to go to some endowment that they had to pay that money. 2 is and that's also that, like, the 3rd coach who's actually been paid before he's finished his tenure. Okay, because they had to do that with Mullen, they had to do that with Lavin. 2 is that Pitino was team had to lose too. Pitino, I own a team. I might not have made that big a difference, but I'm sorry. As much as I was sort of rooting for them, and I hate UConn, I wanted I wanted to be one and done in that tournament. Yeah. I didn't want them to make a run for him to be like, you know what? How can I leave these kids? We just made the Elite Eight or whatever the case may be. And then the 3rd point is that the age comes into play here in our favor. Okay, we're talking about him being 70 and whatever he does, however many years he's here for. But
lead to another job either. Yeah,
he would if he's 50. He's not coming to St. John's. Okay, he's got his family planted. He's not uprooting his wife, who wants to stay in Long Island. They want to play at the golf course, Westchester. He's kind of settled now, so to speak. So the only job he was really in line with taking was really this job. And so so it was an odd situation that really it took a lot of dominoes to fall in place, and it took. I don't think it took a lot of, and also for his whatever issue he was having, right, where he was accused of X, Y, and Z. We won't bring that up, but that had to resolve itself because Serge was talking about Pitino as a coach 8 years ago. But the problem was when people talked about that behind the scenes on Twitter, it's like, we don't want this guy. He's a crook. He's a criminal. He's a this. He's a that. So if those allegations were not dropped, Pitino's not our coach either. So
guys,
you got
again, a hello from our good friend Carson Shear. He's a big-time Michigan State fan, but he's also a big-time Pitino guy. What's up, guys? Let's go St. John's. Pitino is going to get it done.
Nice. You got a lot of listeners here.
That's right. He's a Michigan State student, a big-time Michigan State fan, but he's always very high on Pitino. And think about it, how many people do we talk to and they're like, Pitino's a bad coach? Do you hear anybody ever say that? Like,
well,
no.
I mean, unless they're drunk.
Right. But seriously, like, who could say Pitino? I mean, you could go around other players. Oh, he didn't win here. Where didn't he win?
Yeah. And it doesn't come with the craziness of the, well, Bobby Knight's a great coach, but he might throw a chair at your kid kind of problem, either. So yeah.
All right, let's do some final thoughts, Serge. Anything else on your mind, St. John's wise?
Final thoughts is that I love being on the air with you guys. You guys love this shit just as much as I do.
We do.
It's just good, man. I spent my whole morning doing videos for Instagram and stuff like that, and I always say to myself, like, people actually watch this stuff, but it matters to us. It matters to us.
Yeah, and we will do whenever you want, Serge. You could talk all your trash now, but you come talk to me in November when we're like 12-3, 12-4.
Listen, if the Broncos are 12-3, two things happen. A, somebody else is quarterbacking, okay? Or B, your running back's on pace to run for 3,000 yards.
But that's all we got to do. Run the ball, play defense.
If you do it that way,
play actions, let's go.
If you go to a New York Giant type offense where you're going to roll out the quarterback and just make it a one read, simple.
But isn't that what he did in Seattle?
I don't know. He had to make some plays there.
No, but the difference was he could still run back then.
He can run, yeah. He's not running the ball, and that's the problem.
They said he's trimmed down, lost about 18 pounds. He's back to his running game.
So is Serge, but he still runs a 5.240.
Yeah, I know. I lost 30 pounds, but I still can't move like I did when I was.
By the way, how's the softball going?
Huh?
How's the softball going?
We're 6-3. We lost a tough game today to Whippany Park. You know what I'm struggling with this group?
But you know what? You get hot. You're like Izzo. You know when it's like, what do they say? January, February.
Yeah, we're May 1st. May 1st. It's funny because we preach May 1st to the kids.
That's what I'm saying. They'll get you now, but later, here he comes. Here he comes.
You know what I'm struggling with right now with this group is I told the kids when the season started, especially after winning the Group 2 state title last year, that it's harder to stay on top than it is to get there. And we don't have senioritis. Our kids are playing hard, but we're not playing hard mentally. We're making a lot of mental mistakes. And I don't know if it's me that I have to find something else to motivate them to keep them sharp. Maybe I got to bench a couple of kids. Maybe I don't know what I have to do. I got home and I jumped right onto this. We have 2 days of practice before we play Beckton on Saturday. So I have to figure something out. But we are making just absolutely too many mental mistakes that we were not making. We're just not sharp right now from a focus standpoint. And so I got to figure that out.
You will. We have faith. Wait, real quick, Beckton, you guys, where are you, home or away?
We're at Cedar Grove at the Panther
tournament?
Yeah.
Okay. Justin, final thoughts tonight.
Yeah, same thing that Serge said. It's this is kind of a great outlet. So we do appreciate you having us on. And I did a segment with Serge. He did a live show about a month ago. And he if you, I'm sure you've watched his show before, but any
Yep.
of the listeners that are out there, if you get a chance, I'm actually going to plug him. So if you get a chance to watch his show or his segments on Instagram, Facebook, or what, YouTube, or whatever it is, or listen to his show, not only has he been able to procure some really interesting guest speakers that are relevant, but his new format where, and correct me if I'm wrong, Serge, where you're doing a bunch of segments sort of talking about almost in advance of it happening. It's kind of a specialty here, almost in advance of important topics that are happening or relevant to the sports world. That he is doing these kind of, what would you say, Serge? Maybe like 2-3 minute segments, give or take, or
Yeah. So what we do is what I've been doing, and we started doing this about 5-6 months ago, is recording points on topics and just putting them out there on things where I see things are going to go, issues that teams might have, opinions on Hall of Fame, stuff like that, a voter. And so, fortunately for me, my guys who put a lot of the stuff together have given me solid topics, and I've hit on a lot of things, So we've been very, very fortunate with that.
we're going to try to put together a sort of pre-draft fantasy football show sometime.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, in like first week of August. So if you'd like to, right, Serge, if
Yeah.
Kurt would like to come on and kind of give his 2 cents to that segment, and we're gonna try to, I'm gonna try to get Peter King to come on, and some relevant, maybe David Njoku, who I talk to often, stuff like that, to give their 2 cents to put together our fantasy football preview and thoughts on that. So
awesome. This year is going to be wild, though. Like, this is probably the first year, I mean, with fantasy, right? Every year it was running back. Like, this year, like, who's going, like, first round, who's going where? It's a little like last year. McCaffrey, this guy. Now it's like,
It's kind of like closers in football and baseball. This is what's happened is that you have so many running back by committee teams.
Yep.
Just like they're kind of closer by committee, it makes it very difficult to draft. In theory, it makes those running backs that much more valuable. But you go back to every first round of every fantasy draft in the last decade. I'll go all the way back to Tomlinson and Sean Alexander as the only 2 guys who produced in the first round of those drafts. Like, you can't pick, guys get picked in the top of Alvin Kamara's and all those guys, and they're 8 out of 10 or 12 first round picks are irrelevant, hurt or not. It's really you to me, you win the draft in the 4th or 5th or 6th round. The Devontae Smiths or those kind of guys will win your fantasy football leagues.
All I know is, Serge, you're coming on a show and we get in the playoffs. I was wrong about Russ.
Good. Okay, I'll see you in 2029.
At his retirement party.
There you go. All right, boys. No, it was awesome having you guys on. Listen, I could do this all friggin' day, all night, anytime you guys want. I love sports. You know that I'm a huge St. John's fan. You guys are huge St. John's.
I'm a big Knicks fan too.
Oh, let's go. So give me a prediction.
The Knicks will win in 6.
Me too. I'm with 6, Justin.
Yeah, I think 6 too. Yep.
They win the next 2.
I mean, look at the. I don't know. Yeah.
You know what? Cleveland's so bad defensively on the road. I think, you know what? Yeah, I think they'll go back 3-1. Yeah.
That's big.
What's super interesting is look at the 2 games tonight that, unless I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure this was the Grizzlies and the Bucks won without Giannis.
Their stars. Yeah.
Yep. Well, to be fair, though, the Grizzlies, the Lakers, listen, the Lakers have been terrible. I don't buy that stuff. I expect the Grizzlies to be able to get it done. And the Heat, listen, they are well coached. Spoken coached his butt off. But the Milwaukee Bucks right now, that roster is just, they understand who they are. which is
Yeah.
probably more important than anything else
Yeah.
in a team. If you understand who you are, and the roles will just, you'll figure it out as you go.
All right,
That's
last
the
thing I
goal,
promise.
but-
Last thing I promise, Knicks, because you guys got me fired up with Knicks now. But I promise, one more second. I heard this from Alan Hahn last week, and they were talking about the offseason and this team, and they were saying one more guy. Like the Knicks are one guy away. And realistically, like they're not going to throw out LeBron James and they threw out 3 realistic guys who Alan Hahn thinks could be attainable, especially starting this offseason. He said his long shot is Jaylen Brown. He said his perfect fit is Jimmy Butler, and his out of the box guy would be Paul George. If you took one of those 3 and put them on the Knicks, are they championship contenders? Yes or no?
They need a big guy. Yeah. I see those guys don't fit at all, unfortunately. The problem is with Randall on the team, and RJ Barrett shoots the ball. RJ Barrett pouts half the time because Randall dominates the game so much. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just so see, Jimmy Butler. The reason Jimmy Butler is a very good defensive player. So Jimmy Butler would make them a better defensive team, But yeah, and Paul George is hurt. He's missing so much time in every season.
But that's down the road. That's down the road. Let's worry about Friday night.
I don't think any one of those guys.
I would take a big power forward. If there's
I'll take Karl Anthony Towns before I take those guys.
Right, correct, definitely. I would take any of the big. They are very. Mitchell Robinson's terrible. The Jewish kid's pretty good. I like that kid, but
obviously because he's Jewish, right?
That's it. And my last Zion. Would you look for Zion or no way?
Nah. Can't trust him. 1, you can't trust him to stay healthy. And 2, even when he's healthy, he's scared to play.
Yeah. And I mean, and he's also is the amount of money he's making.
Yeah.
He's better off doing a weight Marshall. I'm telling you, man. He's that guy.
You give him a week, he'll take off the weight.
There you go. All right, boys. Awesome time. Love talking with you. And we got to do it again.
You got
Thanks,
him, my brother.